Hey there, you're listening to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, and MMA on occasion. Here's your host, RJ Carbone.
Soto, a high fly ball to center. Thomas backing up. Thomas at the track. And one, Soto! DiVincenzo a three. Bang! Bang! Knicks take a
Take this time to apologize to absolutely nobody.
At the wall. See ya! See ya! See ya! Mr. Nobody.
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied.
You shook up the world again.
I did it again. But God did it, man. I really just have
To Brunson running away. Oh my! He has been the best player to put on that uniform.
Ball game over. Yankees win. The Yankees win.
All right. Well, we are at that point, folks. I said beginning of the season, I was actually listening to a podcast, and it was earlier in the year for the Knicks, and I thought, they mentioned I'm not going to judge this team. This was a KFS. They said I'm not going to judge this team until 20 games in. I thought that was a good point, a good mark to really give my first true evaluation, although I've spewed my thoughts multiple times at the top of the show. But we are officially there. We're at that 20-game season. It is the 2nd of December as I'm recording this, and the Knicks, they're there. They've just won 2 in a row. They've won 8 out of 11. So there's some rhythm there lately. Overall, in the year, they're 12-8 through their first 20 games. Could care less really about the record. That, I'm not worried about the standings this early. But, that is a 600 record. It's a pace for 49-ish, 50 games. But I'm looking at the team. So, to be in 4th place throughout all the early season garbage, right? all the inconsistencies, Brunson's slow start, the Mikal Bridges stuff, which we'll talk about in this one. The pick and roll, point of attack defense, drop coverage, hedge, like everything we've discussed. The offense versus certain defensive coverages, how it struggled, the injuries the Knicks have had to deal with. Throughout all of that, the Knicks have at least maintained a steady pace. They've been treading water, right? So, just in terms of the way they look through 20 games, not as optimistic as I initially thought I'd be entering the year, but I did say I was entering the season with being optimistic with caution. I think that was the term I used. So this game itself, there's not much to talk about. The Knicks routed the Pelicans, and Bridges had a big night, and thank God they beat this Pelicans team. Because, listen, they have not had their last 2 games, they played 2 G League teams, right? They played the Greensboro Swarm on Friday, the Hornets. And then last night they take on the Birmingham Squadron, right? Now, maybe the Pelicans are a little bit more respectable than that Hornets team was, but the Pelicans are even more banged up. They do have NBA talent out there, though. The CJ McCollum is this guy's been a 20 points per game scorer for a decade straight. He's been super consistent, and it's not talked about enough. They had DeJounte Murray out there, who's an all-star level wing. Trey Murphy is a bucket, only going to get better. Even what's his name, Missy? Looks like a young Mitch out there. And then they've got some solid veteran guys coming off the bench, and Daniel Tice and Alfred Payton, former friend. So, the Knicks won by 33 points against that team, where the Knicks' big three, Brunson, Towns, and Anunoby, combined for 37 points on 30% shooting. So, there's something there. That's good. Again, the Knicks, this was garbage time throughout the entire, ever since late first quarter. It was just, they got off to this, what was that, a 28-4 start? The Pelicans never came close. And it was so bad that Tibbs even went to the bench early in the fourth quarter, which I know that satisfied the softies. It satisfied me because it allowed me to go watch Yellowstone at 8 p.m. I didn't really watch the majority of that fourth quarter. I went to watch Yellowstone, which has been incredible this season, by the way. Won't spoil it. But so the Knicks win 118-85. Again, nothing macro to take from this game. It's just, it was a lot of Mikal, which we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a lot of Mikal Bridges in this episode. Defensively, the Knicks, the trend remains where it's very little drop. So you love that. I thought their rotations were very sharp. The Knicks were there before every pass. I thought OG Anunoby was excellent again defensively, whether it be in low man help or disrupting DHO. That's what he does best. Mikal Bridges played solid defense. Jericho Sims played great defense. Offensively, the Knicks took advantage of poor switching very well in this game. And when you're switching, you have to be connected out there. You've got to be able to communicate who's switching who. The Pelicans were everything but connected. They handled the Knicks' cuts like shit, and so the Knicks put a smacking on them. Brunson went out there and dropped 16-9. Cat, 14-19. Anunoby, 7 points. He's struggling badly right now offensively. He has looked awful the last 3 games. Defenses are starting to adjust to him getting the majority of his baskets in free-flowing offense and in spot-ups. They're forcing him to now beat them in one-on-one, which he's not great with the ball in his hands. How many times do we see him dribble in the middle and turn it over? So he now has to readjust to that. But this game was led by, for the third time, Mikal Bridges. And that's why we're going to start by handing him the game ball from last night. Bing bang. Mikal Bridges last night against the Pelicans, 31 points, shot 12 for 19 from the floor. He was 7 for 12 from 3, and he was a plus 40 overall. This is his first game ball, believe it or not, of the season. I guess you can believe it. Definitely his best game as a Knick. He's had moments like the Nets series a couple weekends ago, but this was the first game where he really erupted. And you saw him just playing with a ton of confidence last night. The more shots that went up and dropped, you could see the body language was just much improved. He was letting it fly with zero hesitation. Very three-point happy, and he was very effective from 3. The shot mechanics looked fine to me. I didn't think it had much of a hitch last night. It looked a lot smoother. More of a one-motion shot than it was a two-motion shot. And I think he knocked down 2 wing threes, right? We've consistently talked about his above the break shooting. So that was a good time, a good sign. What I really liked to see from Mikal in this game was how active he was in freeing himself open off the ball, cutting off of Towns, cutting off of Brunson a whole lot in this game. Just very active without the ball. The first basket for the Knicks, it was some kind of action that flowed into DHO with Towns, and that eventually flowed into a Mikal follow-away jumper on the baseline. The second basket, he scores off of Jalen Brunson's gravity. Towns screens for Bridges to get the Robinson-Earl switch. Bridges passes to Brunson on the opposite elbow for a sec. and Brunson with the ball, just his gravity alone draws nail help from Robinson Earl. So Mikal uses that space to cut, and he cuts right by Robinson Earl. Brunson finds Mikal low, gets the basket. Late in the first quarter, I have a couple of things jotted down here I just want to go over. Late in the first quarter, you get the Knicks. The Knicks run this set a lot to get the switch. When they want to get a switch, you'll see them lean into this offense. It's I don't know. Again, I'm not great with X's and O's, but I do know it's offense that comes from the thumb series, the chin series. For the layman out there that know even less than I do, chin series offense is basically it's ball reversal, right? It's a ball reversal action that creates scoring opportunities with a down screen. And then the thumb series is basically a series of screens and ball movement. It opens up scoring opportunities through player movement and spacing. And the Knicks like to go to their offense where they blend those two actions, right? You see that a lot in modern offense. It's just a way to create more unpredictable offense, and it's just a dynamic attack to exploit a defense. And the Knicks ran it a couple times in this game, but the first time they ran it, it was with Towns, Anunoby, and Bridges. Towns was used as the chin away on the right elbow. He screens initially for a cutting campaign, and then he flips the screen off the cut. OG curls up off the Towns screen from that same weak side corner. That flows into a give-and-go handoff with Mikal up top. Then Towns flips the screen again. This time it's for Mikal. Mikal uses that screen to drive the switch. In this case, I think it was Daniel Tice. And he flows that into a pull-up corner three. So it's just a great way to create offense on a defense that's having trouble switching. Early in the third quarter, they run some type of wheel set. I don't know the action. It was wheel offense. You know, it's a three-man action with Brunson, Towns, and Mikal in this case. Brunson's on the corner with the ball. Towns is one pass away, screening for Mikal, who curls off it. Brunson hits Towns. Towns fakes DHO to Brunson, and he finds Mikal curling back to that same strong side corner off the screen. Mikal knocks down a corner three. The very next basket, you get a Brunson DHO off a double screen with Mikal and Towns. I don't know the name of the action again, but basically Brunson probes the paint once he comes off the Towns screen. Mikal makes a 45 cut to the basket, and Brunson makes a pocket pass to Mikal for a cutting layup. A few possessions later, I thought Mikal just did a very nice job making an excellent read on the defense. The Pelicans send low man help to Brunson off a drive from the right wing. Mikal makes that read, and he cuts into the weak side space. Brunson makes a pocket pass around like three different defenders off the drive, and he finds Mikal for another cutting layup. Late in the third quarter, you had again, I don't know the name of this action, but basically it was a Deuce Jericho high pick and roll that flowed into a Jericho weak side screen for Jalen Brunson. Brunson receives the pass from Deuce at the free throw line extended. He fakes a lob to Jericho on the roll, and then he hits it, cutting Mikal Bridges from the opposite short corner. So it was just nice to see Mikal Bridges get his offense off of cuts and not just relegated to standing on the corner. You know, Mikal's a guy who cuts well, but it's not a gigantic part of his game, so it was nice to see that last night. Just moving very effectively and using Brunson to cut off of. So it was a nice game. It was a nice performance. Mikal Bridges, now his season statistics here stand, and he's averaging 16 points per game on 47% shooting from the floor, 33% from three, and 62% at the free throw stripe. So the effective field goal percentage is probably still not great. But it was good to see him bounce back and finally put something together after probably the worst performance from him as a Knick. Just had some very down moments in that game against Charlotte. And then he's bouncing back here when he comes back home at the Garden, where he plays better. He's so far played a lot better at the Garden. I don't know if that's a trend we should keep an eye on. But listen, for a team that, again, I hate to keep bringing up the picks, but for the Knicks to get where they want, Mikal Bridges has to get right. He has to figure out himself. And a lot of it's mental, but if they can get this guy right and fixing the parts of his game that have been lacking so far, the ceiling significantly improves, or the floor, I should say. Just all the things that he struggled with, right? The dribble drive, right? Start attacking more frequently. Get to the free throw line more. Shooting on the wings and at the top of the key. His defense, which has been my biggest gripe with him, because I do think the offense will eventually come. The defense, which did take a step back last year with the Nets, has taken another step back, right? And it's mainly his defense at the point of attack. Fighting over the top of screens, right? Getting skinny to make rear view contests. Staying attached to guys off screen. Staying in front in isolation, not behind the hips. You've already got weak points in Brunson and Towns. You're going to need Mikal in that starting lineup to be a strength defensively and not another weak point, or else this is going nowhere. So I thought his defense was fine last night, and it's been a little better over the last couple weeks. It's just not going noticed because of how badly he's been offensively, and the Knicks, how bad they've been defensively. But you're going to need the consistency to be there going forward. We're 20 games in. Hopefully this is what finally jumpstarts him. We'll see. But that was Mikal Bridges last night. He was good. He was effective. And then you go to the bench, and I'm going to hand the game ball from off the bench to Deuce Miles McBride. I don't think I've ever called him Miles McBride.
Bing bang.
Deuce McBride last night, 13 points, 5 for 9 shooting, 3 for 4 on his three-pointer, and he was a plus 18 in the plus-minus category. That's his 11th game ball, which leads the Knicks. He continues to shoot the lights out of the ball, shooting with plenty of confidence, and the Knicks continue to run plays for him a little bit more. You're seeing that more and more with how consistent he's been as the Knicks' sixth man. They're running some actions for him. Late in the first quarter, they ran a very similar set out of that thumb series, that chin series, where they kind of combined those two series. They ran that for Deuce the very next play, I believe it was, and that ended up giving Deuce an elbow three-pointer. And then a few minutes later after that, they run Miami offense out of a slob set. You got campaign inbounding. Deuce and Towns are screening on the free throw line extended above the elbows. Mikal cuts off both of those screens to receive the inbound. He hands off to Cam. Cat flips the screen again, and then Cam takes a dribble middle, kind of to draw nail help off of Deuce McBride, who's on the weak side elbow, and he hits Deuce, who's now open for three on that elbow. So you're seeing him involved in a little more offense. That's good to see, especially when Brunson's not on the floor, and he's able to play off of campaign. But Deuce McBride continues to be their best weapon off the bench offensively, and he continues to be a force defensively at the point of attack, right? That's been a thing that Knicks fans are really enjoying, how great he is at the level there on pick and roll. So Deuce McBride now on the season, averaging 11 points per game, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, shooting a very efficient 47%, 41% from 3, and 87% at the free throw line. So, again, he now has 11 game balls on the year. And the bench has been good overall for the Knicks, man. Like, you got to give a shout-out. You got to give a major shout-out to Jericho Sims, who had a slow start to the year, but he's been picked it up. I mean, the last couple of weeks, can you say almost a month now? Really, it was only like the first 3 games where he was egregiously bad. But I think Jericho's been good. Quick feet on the perimeter, which allows the Knicks to switch him because he's able to stay in front of a guard. In fact, you saw late in the first quarter, there was a possession where he switches onto Murray up top, stays with him, and he ends up blocking his shot. Actually, I think the offensive foul was called before the block could be called, but very good defensive sequence there. The rim protection just remains super reliable, super dependable. I think I saw on Twitter, 33% his opponent rim percentage, which is just incredible. So you can put him in drop, you can put him in a switch, you can have him in help, but he's very effective because he's athletic. The athleticism helps him out. For a guy who's undersized, he's got the athleticism to where he can help you defensively. He rebounds well. He draws a ton of fouls off the offensive glass. Every time he comes on the floor, he's providing winning minutes. Every time he's out there, winning minutes, and that's because of his defense. The net rating is always positive with Jericho Sims. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see when Precious Achiuwa returns, whatever the hell that's going to be, because this guy's been out forever, and they keep saying he's close and close, and he never comes back. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jericho Sims when Precious does return. Do we see Precious and Sims come off the bench together, right? How often do we see that lineup? How long are those stints going to be? Versus which matchups do we see that lineup? Or do we see more of, what everybody's been talking about, Precious Achiuwa with Towns? That's the obvious defensive upgrade in the starting lineup. It obviously also lessens the wing workload because you're removing, let's say, Josh Hart. But again, that's a lineup where the offense is going to take a major hit the longer you go with that. And the point of bringing Towns here was for him to provide spacing as a 5. When you're doubling up in the front court with 2 bigs, that's going to remove the big off him. That's going to clog the paint a lot more than people think. So, does Tibbs, does he keep his rotation at 8? Is it just simply Precious over Jericho? Does he go to more of an 8.5? Where Sims, his role diminishes a little bit. Or does he go to a full 9-man? I don't think we're going to see that, but I will say, we haven't seen much at all of those Towns Sims lineups, and both of them have been healthy all year, knock on wood, which is a little surprising. It's a little surprising given how much the Knicks have struggled defensively when Towns is on the floor, and given how effective they've been defensively when Jericho's on the floor over Towns. Just knowing who Tibbs is, how much he loves rim protection and pick and roll defense, we haven't seen that Towns Sims lineup. So I don't know if that's an indicator that he's going to prioritize offense even when Jericho returns, but I'm also curious, does he continue to stagger Brunson and Towns, right, with the bench? Or does it eventually become someone else, right? Obviously, he does a lot of staggering right now between those two to keep one of them out there at all times to help alleviate the defensive issues, because when both Brunson and Towns are out there, that's when the defensive problems really arise. And also, that would limit, if you continue to stagger Brunson, it's going to limit those Precious and Sims minutes together, right? That if you keep staggering them to Brunson and Towns. And I like when Brunson's out there with Jericho. They have a very good pick and roll tandem. When it's Brunson, Jericho, and 3 spacers, the Knicks have a very good offense. But, I don't know. Do we see, if the Knicks go to a full 9, bench lineups with Cam, Deuce, Precious, Sims, and somebody else, like Anunoby. Does Anunoby play with that unit? That'd be an interesting 5-man combo. But again, I prefer the Knicks to continue to stagger Brunson and Towns just to keep this defense survivable, because I'm not one where I want Towns to play 5 or to play off the 5, to play 4. So if I'm keeping him at the 5, I need some kind of way to get defense, and I think you just have to separate them 2 here and there and continue to stagger. So this rotation is going to get very interesting, and that's, we haven't even mentioned Mitchell Robinson's name, which that might be more January than it is sometime in this month, but if it's even January. But we'll see. Precious might be back. I don't even want to estimate, because I thought he'd be back after the road trip, after the West Coast trip. But yesterday was the first game back at the Garden, and haven't seen him yet. But up next, the Knicks will have the Orlando Magic Orlando Magic come to town, and that's a team that's been on a run. It's tomorrow night back at MSG. I think it's a 7:30 game. That's a tough matchup for the Knicks. Last couple years, the Knicks have had problems beating that Orlando team. That's a team with a lot of wingspan. It's a very switchable defense. And on the other end, their offense isn't amazing, but they've got some tough covers. And that offense against the Knicks defense could give them problems. But they're a feisty defense, man. They are in every action. They play defense with a purpose. They love to disrupt and play tight. I'm curious to see what happens. I know Paolo Banchero's still injured, but Orlando's been on a run since. I think they've won 5 in a row. They just beat the Nets. But the Knicks, this is a big test. It's time to man the hell up and beat a good team, right? You beat Denver, you beat Milwaukee, you beat Phoenix. You haven't really beaten anybody else. You know, the other 5 or the other 7, 8, 9 wins, whatever it is, have been against very bottom of the barrel teams, non-contenders. So if you can go out there tomorrow and beat this Orlando team, you'll get some positive attention from me, right? I'll take notice of it. You know, I just want to see it. I just want to see. That's like the next step here. Beat a good team, and beat a team that's probably going to be switching a lot. You know, a defense that's got a lot of wingspan. So we'll see. But the Knicks are now 2-0 on a stretch where I asked them to go 10-3 by the end of the 2024 year. So now that means they just have to go 8-3 the rest of the way to wrap up 2024. Good start. Let's beat the Magic, and after the Magic, it continues to be much, much easy for the Knicks to wrap up this year. So that's one of the few tough teams that's on their schedule to wrap up 24. But with that said, let's head to a break, and we will be back in a few minutes to wrap this thing up with our trivia question of the day. Stay with us. We'll be right back here on episode 753 of BD4.
Hey there. Thanks for listening in so far. If you enjoy this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much. You can follow us on social media as well. On Instagram, we're at BD4Pod and at Rob J. Carbone. On X, we're at BD4Pod and at RJCBD4. And on Facebook, we're BD4. If you're interested in our website, just go to www.bd4blog.com. You can subscribe to our blog on there right on the front page. Just like on the podcast, we cover Yankees, Knicks, and MMA. Also on our website are the links to the different platforms for the podcast. Thanks so much.
Studio 69 Productions is a podcast production agency created by Leo Rodriguez to allow content creators to market their podcast. It's an online platform that will market your podcast or any other project that you're working on. Get in touch with Leo Rodriguez from Studio 69 Productions. You can find Studio 69 Productions on Instagram at Studio69NJ. Studio 69 Productions, where dreams are heard and born.
Thanks Thanks for listening to BD4, where there is no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA, Yanks every series, Knicks every game, and MMA on occasion.
All right, back to the show. Episode 753 of BD4. Welcome back. Let's wrap this up. I think that's all we have. Didn't miss anything. Hit the usual talking points that we wanted to get to, and let's wrap this up right now with our trivia question, and that'll be that. All right. So for this episode 753, our trivia question. The Knicks went below 500 against the New Orleans Hornets, but what are they against the Pelicans all time? Above, below, or even? All right. The Knicks went below 500 against the New Orleans Hornets, but what are they so far against the Pelicans? Above, below, or even? This is all time. So let me know the answer wherever you can reach me. If you get the answer correct, I'll give you a shout out in the next episode. If you don't get it correct, tough shit. You don't get a shout out in front of all two of our listeners. No, but I do appreciate everybody who does tune in. Always do. Always will. And with that said, episode 753 is in the books. We're going to wrap it up here. The Knicks play the Magic tomorrow. So we'll see where that goes. I got to go take care of some things. I'll drop this episode, and that'll be that, and I'll see you in 754. But 753 in the books. I do appreciate all of you for tuning in, and see you soon. This episode was brought to you by Anchor.
Hey there! If you stayed the entire way through, we thank you immensely for it. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you come back for the next episode real soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, download these episodes, and share them with your friends as well. BD4 is a 5-star podcast simply because of you, and we'd like to keep it that way. Have a wonderful day. Go Yankees, and go Knicks!